Hey everyone, welcome to my podcast, or welcome back if you've been here before. Pretty happy to have you here. Each week you can join me here as I review the topic of the week from my weekly collaboration at Delish. And each week we have a different topic that touches on many aspects of our lives, and I feel it'll touch anybody, no matter what their venture is in life, if they're self-employed, entrepreneur, working in a corporation, etc. I think there's just a little bit for everyone. So I'd like to dive right in. Let's get to this week's topic of the week. So this week we talked about imposter syndrome. I feel like we go through life lately with all of these buzzwords, and imposter syndrome is this buzzword that we throw out there all the time and label ourselves, label other people, and just kind of move on. It's like, yeah, I totally have imposter syndrome. And then we don't think about what that means to understand how that's affecting us and how we should be maybe trying to make improvements and changes to get out of that imposter syndrome and just remove the label that we've created. So we had some really great conversations around it. And the very first thing that I wanted to do is kind of define what imposter syndrome is, because it's become the buzzword that we just throw out there. We don't even think of what that even actually means. So if you have imposter syndrome as a feeling, really, it's that feeling of self-doubt, or you have some uncertainty about your talents or abilities. You just doubt that you're capable of things. And you have a sense of unworthiness, that and all of this that doesn't align with what other people think about you. So you have this unrealistic expectation of yourself, or unrealistic understanding of yourself that is actually untrue if you were to ask someone else their opinion of you. So feelings of self-doubt, uncertainty of your talents and abilities, and sense of unworthiness that doesn't align with what others think about you. It's pretty heavy, actually. Some of the characteristics of imposter syndrome that we touched on. So, of course, self-doubt, which was in the definition itself, just that feeling of lack and anxiety of your abilities and your ability to succeed. Undervaluing your contributions. So, as an example, someone gives you a compliment and it's like, oh, it's no big deal. So, undervaluing your contributions. Attributing success to external factors. So, you were successful in some way, but you can't take the credit for it. Somebody external factor made you a success. Say, oh, I was just lucky. It's just luck that I was successful. Nothing to do with my contributions. Sabotaging your self-success. So intentionally taking risks that you know will not allow you to succeed, or intentionally not doing something to sabotage that success. Again, these are all characteristics of imposter syndrome. And you might resonate with one, two, all, and that's okay. Like, don't take these things as a negative. The intention of having the conversation is to identify so that you can know and acknowledge any of the things that you might have, any of these characteristics that you might have, and then determine what you want to do with that to make possible changes, to make improvements. Setting unrealistic expectations is another characteristic. So maybe super high standards, and when you can't reach it, you just feel inadequate, or accomplishing it is unrealistic, or it's too complex or too challenging of a goal. Now, obviously, we want to set goals that push us, but if you're setting the goal way too high, intentionally knowing in the back of your mind that you won't achieve it because you won't allow yourself to, then, that's maybe sabotaging yourself a little bit. Continuous fear of not living up to expectations. That's kind of a big one. You just have that fear of not being able to get it. And that gives you that syndrome, that there's the ability to achieve anything or achieve that goal, right? And then the last big one, this is huge, is burnout. So overcoming a sense of incompetence, pushing yourself too hard, and ultimately resulting in burnout. So all some characteristics of imposter syndrome. There are a few different types of imposter syndrome that we talked about. And we had a little bit of a quiz at the beginning, and we answered these different questions that you could determine if that was something that you did or didn't do. Some of the questions were, have you been told that you micromanage? Do you feel your work must always be perfect no matter the price? Do you stay late in the office or at work to get things done when everyone else is left? Do you work on future projects to get ahead of them and not have downtime? Do you reject work that you are not good at or that seems challenging? Do you sometimes choose to not give something your best effort because you're afraid that your best effort wouldn't be enough? Are you uncomfortable when others see your work in process? Do you resent offers of help or even status requests? Do you feel shaky and restless when someone refers to you as an expert? Do you stick with what you know and make sure you know it best? Are you always in search of the next certificate or degree? Do you find it difficult to accept compliments and celebrate accomplishments? Are you often in self-improvement mode or feel embarrassed to tell anyone else? Sorry, let me read that again. I read that incorrect. Are you often in self-improvement mode but feel embarrassed to tell anyone else? Do you answer a compliment with thanks, but? Do you often think others are just being nice? And do you often wonder how much longer you can keep up the act? If you answered yes to any or all of these questions, you have some characteristics or some types of imposter syndrome. And again, I'm not trying to label anyone. I just want us to become more aware, because with awareness, we can make improvements. If we aren't aware of what we're doing and how it might have a negative effect, we won't know to make changes to improve it. So next at coffee, we dove into the different types of imposter syndrome, and each type kind of correlates with some of those questions that I asked before. So the first type that we talked about is called the perfectionist. You would focus on how you do things, and if you aren't perfect, you criticize yourself and you feel like a failure. Perfectionist is always hungry for more success, better outcomes, and higher prestige. Perfectionism results in feeling unsatisfied no matter how much hard work they do and ambitious goals they have, because it isn't perfect. You might even avoid trying new things because you can't do them perfectly. And truly, perfect and perfectionism don't exist. Achieving perfect isn't possible because that's always just out of reach. So trying to get to perfect or criticizing yourself for not getting to perfect is really trying to achieve an impossible goal. So you need to come to the understanding that perfect is impossible and that it is okay if it isn't perfect. And that by trying to get to perfect, you're holding yourself back, because you'll ultimately, you can not try new things. That could be something that happens to you because you know that you can't do it perfectly, or you settle for perfect in a little bit, like part of the equation you can do perfectly, but you can't get the full experience. So perfectionism or the perfectionist is one of the imposter syndrome types. And I'll be honest, as I go through these, you'll make note of things that you may or may not do, but I touch on many of these things for me personally. Like the perfectionist is certainly something that I struggle with in some manners, some areas of my life, and then other areas I've definitely been able to see that I'm doing those and know that it's not necessary to be perfect. But it's certainly, an area of struggle. The next type would be the Superman or Superwoman, Superperson type. This type thrives in showing off their abilities to take on a lot of work in a short period of time. They're willing to work overtime or to achieve the validation of their colleagues or their managers. So this is definitely something that I have done probably many times in my life, where I take on a lot and can achieve a lot. And I honestly feel really good in that moment, but in the back of my mind have the fear of burnout. Can I get there? Can I cross the finish line? Have I taken on too much? Is this realistic for me to do? So I've learned that to just take a moment and ask the questions of yourself. Can I do this? Is this even achievable? Not to stop myself from doing it, but to be able to acknowledge where I might need help. So the Superman, Superwoman, Superperson type. You might have the belief that you must be the hardest worker or achiever to achieve the highest level, or you're a fraud. That might be a belief you have. You must be the hardest worker or achieve the highest levels, or you're a fraud. It's heavy stuff. The third type is the natural genius. So the natural genius is, they believe that they're right the first time. So they're like naturally really good at things. So they should only have to do it the first time, and they get it right the first time. So then when they get criticism, they struggle. And they'll maybe be pushing back or close down, that type of thing. And if something doesn't come easy to them, we might struggle or we feel embarrassed. And this type can actually really hold you back, because if you don't think you can naturally do it well the first time, you don't do it at all. You just block that off and you won't try those new things because you're afraid that you won't be good at it right out of the gate. And you just ultimately hold yourself back. The fourth is the soloist. You believe you should be able to handle everything solo. If you can't achieve success independently, you consider yourself unworthy. And you're not interested in getting support from others to do your tasks. You won't ask for help. You might feel some shame when you ask for help because you can't get everything done on your own. And ultimately, this type, you're holding yourself back again, because to be able to do everything, you're going to hit your ceiling, because there's only so much one person can do. So if you're not willing to ask for help, or maybe bring on an assistant, or farm out your say your social media, or some aspect that isn't something that you're good at, or something that you can't fit in your day of activity, ultimately you're going to hit a ceiling and only so much that you can do. And then you might end up in that that Superman Superwoman thing where you're like, I can do it all, and you like pile on more and you work more, but ultimately you can end up in burnout, because if you want to get past your ceiling, you need to be able to give up some of those things, because you have a capacity. There's only so many hours in the day. There's only so much you can do before you sacrifice something, your health, your family, just other business. The fifth one is the expert. So this type is an imposter feels the compulsive need to have all the knowledge and experience before they even attempt a job. Or the expert feels like an imposter because they don't know everything, yet they are the expert. This one's fairly big in my profession. So I'm a real estate agent, and I see this actually with young or new or maybe agents that haven't had as much experience because they feel like they're an imposter because they don't know everything there is to know about real estate. And yet they're considered, the professional in the industry, the expert. But what we all need to remember is that you literally cannot know everything. And in our industry, especially, it's forever changing. No, and this is why I got into this industry, is because there's no transaction the same. There's no two properties and two sets of people buying that property in their situation that's the same. It's always different. And that's what's so great about it. But then you need to not beat yourself up about it if you don't have all the answers. And know that we are a profession, which means there are professionals in our industry that you can ask. And it's okay to ask. It's a bit hard. Anybody who's not in real estate might not totally understand this, but let me just throw this out there. I say this because I believe this. I'd like, yes, reach out to other professionals. We're here to help. But our industry as a whole, that's not been the case for me up to this point. And it's something that I really want to help change. Up to this point in my career, it's been very independent, very solo. I haven't had anybody who's wanted to help me. And anytime I've reached out to others, it's been pretty clear that nobody wants to help you. It's very cutthroat, very independent, very competitive. However, it doesn't have to be that way. And that's something that I'm working at changing within the people that I touch. There are people out there that want to help you. There are other agents out there that want to see you succeed, because we know that there's enough business to go around. And if you succeed, I succeed, and the next agent succeeds. So, yes, we are the professionals. Yes, we are the experts in our field. But no, we do not have to know everything. And you can rely on your peers to help you through that. And if you don't have peers like that, call me. We can be peers. I'm happy to help. So there's two more types of imposter syndrome. The noticer. The noticer is forgiving of others, but never extends that grace to themselves. So they, for instance, will say, oh, well, they did great. But if you did that exact same thing, you wouldn't think you did great. They are aware of the competition, whether it's real or imagined, and they secretly believe that they will always miss the bar, that they won't be as good as the competition, that they just won't stack up. And ultimately, that type has a real fear of not belonging, which is actually a great follow-up to the conversation that I just had about reaching out to your peers and having that collaboration around you. Lastly, there's the discounter. So they automatically rationalize away evidence of their competence. So this is the thanks, but that was in the questions. Somebody gives you a compliment, or the age old, oh, I like your outfit. Oh, thanks, but I got it at Value Village. There's no need for the but. Just think. Accept that there's a compliment to you, or that there's giving you some evidence that you are competent or that you've achieved something. Accept those compliments because they're there for you. But somebody who's a discounter struggles with that. They don't have any value on their work, or trust that the people that are giving the compliments or telling them that they've done well have that they believe what they're saying. And they often think, so discounter often think, well, anybody could have done it. But if you sit back, is that really true? Could anybody have sold that house? Could anybody have helped somebody get a mortgage if you're a mortgage broker? No. Anybody can't just do those things. So two big things that I want to come out of this imposter syndrome conversation is just identify some of the areas that you may be doing these things, and acknowledge that there's a consequence or a price to be paid to doing it. That you might be limiting your ceiling. You're going to be only be able to achieve so much. Or you're not going to try new things because you're afraid to, ultimately, because you're afraid that it might make you look stupid, or it might make you people see that you maybe don't know everything. So just know that there's some consequence to that, and that there's some room for improvement. And then how to improve it? Ask yourself if what you're saying, so when you're in that moment, stop and ask yourself if what you're saying or what you're telling yourself is true. Did you really not deserve the praise that you received? Or another way to do it is, would you say whatever it is you're saying to yourself to someone else? Would you say it to your best friend, your mom, your dad, your son, your daughter, your teacher, whatever that is? Would you say that to them? And I suspect often the answer is probably no, because of course we're way harder on ourselves than we are on other people. But if you just stop and you do that little exercise of asking yourself, if would I do this? Would I say this to, like for me, would I say this to my wife or my daughter? Well, the answer is no. So then why is that? Well, because it's not true. Exactly. Stop beating ourselves up. Also consider, am I holding myself back? Could I do better? Could I benefit from outside help? And remember, perfection isn't real. It's not a real thing. You cannot achieve perfection. There's always the next level. It's always leveling up. So getting there is impossible. Accept that. And I've said this before many times, done is certainly better than not done. You will get way more benefit from done because you will get nothing from not done. So even if you get 50% there, 51% there, start there, because it's better than having nothing, not done. A couple more things. No one person can know it all. And asking for help is a strength, not a weakness. Again, asking for help is a strength, not a weakness. And the very last thing, it's okay to accept a compliment. Somebody compliments you, smile and thank them. Don't do the thanks, but I, had some help, or thanks, but it was not that big a deal. Thanks, but I can actually, it comes really easy to me, so it's really not that big a deal. A simple smile and a thanks. It'll make you feel better because you haven't added the but, and it'll make them feel better because you've acknowledged that they are grateful to you. So that's it. We talked about imposter syndrome this week. I hope you got something out of this. Till next week. Take care. Well, that concludes our episode this week with our topic of the week. Thanks so much for being here. It really does mean a lot to me. If you haven't already, please subscribe or hit that follow button, as I'd love if you come back week to week. If you want to find more about me, you can find me on Instagram at rhonda_tough, on my website at theurbanfarmhousesaskatoon.com, and on Facebook at The Urban Farmhouse Saskatoon. Reach out anytime. I'd love to hear from you. And if you get a chance, leave a comment on this post. I really hope you have a marvelous day, and I can't wait to bring you an episode again next week. Take care.